My native language has a pretty interesting diminutive, and to talk about that, I'm going to be using some examples from English. And although English doesn't really have a single diminutive suffix that you can tack onto every single word, there are certain suffixes that you can add to certain words, and those do make it diminutive. So just to give an example, you can add E to the end of words like dog to get doggy, or a baggie from a bag is a small bag, and that makes it, more cutesy. And in fact, cutesy is another word that has a diminutive. You have cute and you add C at the end, cutesy. It's kind of similar to the bag, baggy, and dog, doggy, but it's a little different because there's an S there, and I'm actually going to bring that up soon again. But anyway, in my native language, we have a very active diminutive. We can just tack it onto any word, and it will make it small and cutesy. And one of the interesting things about this diminutive is that there's a few words that when we use it, we actually don't make it diminutive, we actually make it bigger, like an augmentative. An example of that is the word for the stomach. If we add the diminutive suffix, let's just say for this example, let's use the E ending from dog, doggy, yeah? If we would say stomachy, it actually means, in my language, a beer belly, a pot belly, which is pretty interesting. There's a few reasons that I could think about how this happened. The first reason is, it could be that this is from a funny, sarcastic point of view, like someone who has a big beer belly would say he has a stomachy, a small stomach, and that kind of makes it funny. But another idea is that it actually comes from the fact that a beer belly is actually not that big compared to like obese people. So it might be small compared to the big thing. It's small in the big world. So we use the diminutive anyway, even though it's from a bigger thing than usual. So that's pretty interesting, right? Because that made me think about like evolving a language where a historic diminutive suffix comes to start being used as the augmentative suffix because people kept doing this. And then at a certain point it just switched, and then people just use it as an augmentative suffix for real. In fact, this is not just for the word stomach. I remember one time I was driving past a city and I said, wow, that's a very big village. Like, if village was the diminutive form of the word city, hypothetically, right? Instead of that's a small city, I said that's a big village, because that's the way that our diminutive works sometimes. And I found it very interesting that to say a big city, I actually said a big village. So the diminutive became an augmentative in this, and so it's very interesting. I jokingly started calling this augminutive with my family because this suffix doesn't only mean diminutive, it also does other things, and so I call it an augminutive. It's like an augmentative diminutive, because sometimes it can make a stomach bigger, and sometimes it can make a dog smaller, so augminutive it is. Another interesting thing about our diminutive is that when it comes to body parts, there are a good few body parts that we use a diminutive-derived word for the standard word for that body part instead of just the original word itself. So I'll explain what I mean. So remember when I brought up cutesy and I said I'll bring that up later? This is now the later. So imagine we have the suffix e, right? Dog becomes doggy and bag becomes baggy, and then we have the word cute becomes cutesy. If you don't know the original word cute, you only hear the word cutesy, you might reconstruct that the original non-diminutive form of the word would be cutes, right? Because if you take baggy, you take away the e at the end, you get bag, and you have doggy, you take away the e at the end, you have dog. So if I see the word cutesy, I might say, oh, cutesy, take away the e, cutes. But really, that's not the original word. What you have now is a diminutive-derived form of what would be the original word, but it's not really the original word. So something similar happens in my language, where a good portion of the words for our body parts have a diminutive-derived form of the word instead of the original word. So let's say the diminutive for hand is handsy, we would be calling them hands instead of hand. And then for tooth, instead of saying toothsy, we now say tooths. And I think the reason why this happened, why we have so many words for body parts being diminutive-derived, is because these words, this body part words, are said by mothers to their babies when they're playing around with the children when they're still toddlers. You know, they say, where's your hand? Where's your eye? Point at your nose, that's your nose, that's right. You know, we do that to toddlers. And so I can imagine, right, the mothers, they use the diminutive forms when they talk to their children, right? They say, where's your handsy? Where's your eyesy? Where's your toothsy? You know, if you can imagine, those are the diminutives. And then when the children grow up, or when the parents stop saying the diminutive-derived form sticks, because the diminutive is used so commonly that when they want to use the not diminutive form, they accidentally use a diminutive-derived form. And I think this is a very interesting thing, because this made me think about grammatical genders, and how there's like a lot of the African languages have like 16 grammatical genders or whatever, some crazy number. And so I can imagine that instead of creating diminutive-derived forms for the standard words for these body parts, imagine instead we just keep the diminutive, right? We say handsy and nosy, and then when we grow up we just keep saying them because, you know, that's like the standard word for body parts now. Then I can see a language family where the historic diminutive suffix in one branch becomes an augmentative, and another branch becomes a suffix for the body part gender. That would be pretty interesting. But just a side note, in order to like really become a gender thingy, this language would probably have to already be used to having like 10 other genders, because if you don't have any genders in your language, it would be like a stretch to just make a body part gender just from a diminutive suffix, because you also need to put it on other words in the sentence to make the gender agreement between the other words. So if this language already has a million other genders, then adding the body part gender would be pretty easy, I think. So that's that idea. And similarly, there could be another branch where it evolves into the suffix for an animal gender, because just like mothers say cutesy words for body parts when they're talking to their toddlers, so too, when we talk about animals, we say, here is a little berry, here is a little giraffe. It's very hard to do this with English because English doesn't have like an active diminutive for all words, but I think you can understand what I'm trying to say. That if we keep using the diminutive when we're talking about animals, and we don't turn them into diminutive-derived forms of the word for the animals, if we just keep using the diminutives, then we can also get an animal gender suffix evolved from this originally diminutive form. And I think that's very interesting. Again, so you can have like a language family tree where what was once a diminutive evolves in one branch into an augmentative, another branch into an animal gender, and another branch into a body part gender. And I just thought that was very interesting. Now, another interesting thing, actually, is that we can also kind of use the diminutive to say that it's similar to the thing. Just like originally, if you go back to the beginning of the video, when I said a stomachy means a potbelly, you're not saying it's smaller than a stomach, you're not saying it's more cute stomach, in fact, you're saying it's a potbelly. But in that case, you're also saying that it's a different form of a stomach. A regular stomach is a stomachy is now a potbelly, it's a different form. So I can imagine it can evolve into a suffix that says it's like something. So just like we can say something is dog-like, we can also evolve that we might be able to say this is doggy, because just like a cutesy dog is a dog but more cute, so too you can say that it's like a dog but different, and so that a diminutive can evolve into that suffix also. So that's just another thought that I had. Alright, so that was pretty much all that I was thinking about saying about this diminutive topic, and I'm curious to know, what other things can you see evolving from a diminutive topic? And is it also common in your languages that you speak for a diminutive to kind of sometimes become an augmentative? Do you guys also have interesting suffixes for your nouns or things like that? That would be very interesting to hear, you know. In my original Welcome to Worldbuilding Juice video, I talk about how I listen to the way people say things. So this is one of those examples where I just love hearing how people use language differently to how it's quote-unquote designed to be used, because then like it's really cool to see how certain things can evolve and how it could be hypothetically starting to evolve in a different direction. I just love those kinds of things. So it's very fascinating to me, and I hope that you guys also enjoy this video for that same reason. I didn't sound that excited, I guess, while narrating, but no, it really is exciting things, or not fascinating things. Whatever. English is not my strong suit.